Yeah, so come on, Callum. Come with me and have a look in here. This is the Gateway Baptist Museum. We come in through door number 6. And you just have a look at all the cool stuff.
Oh man, it's
we've got
easy.
in here. Look at that. Look at the old sewing machine. And here's an old projector.
Oh, that's cool. How long ago was that used?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. The history of the church goes back 143 years. So a lot of this stuff would be right from the early days. So it would be interesting to get somebody just to date it all. You can see all the bits and pieces that they had. Look at the old organ here from the, what's it say, the Mason and Hamlin Organ Company. So that would have been brought in from Europe.
Oh wow.
Somewhere. It says here about the music. In the early years, the church had its own brass band. Perhaps Henry Reed, who had assisted William Booth to commence the Salvation Army in the 1860s, got the idea from him. The band played a very active part in providing music for open air work and also for church services. Now, open air work, look here.
What's the difference between open air and
Well,
regular?
this is where they go out of the building. They wouldn't be in the building, they go out on the streets. So you can look at this. This was the organ used for open air ministry. So you can imagine they'd be out there and somebody would be pedaling. I can imagine Sandra. She'd have to get fit to be able to pedal that little baby and to be able to play the music that they've got and these beautiful old things.
And
Here
that
you
would
can
be
see
that would be the band, the brass band. They go out and do the open air stuff.
Yes,
Yeah.
They'd
Oh,
have,
cool.
like the Salvos tend to use to
Yeah.
do it a few years ago, and they'd have all their brass instruments. Well, they do it with the organ and that. Look at the crockery here. This is the original crockery. The red logo came from Mount Pleasant and the blue logo from the church. So Mount Pleasant was where Henry Reed, the man who started off the church, lived. But there's really cool stuff, isn't there? So
Yeah, it's heaps of stuff. But I suppose my big question is, like, you've gone to all this effort to preserve and collect all this stuff. Like, what's so important about having all this history here?
Well, I guess the gear is interesting, isn't it? People are interested in history. But for me, the most important thing is the people. So come over to this corner and have a look. Look at here, it's got all the photos of them. These are the heroes of the faith for Gateway Baptist Church, or it used to be called Memorial Baptist. And so you can see here, he's the man, Henry Reed, from 1876 to 1880. So it was only 4 years that he was actually leading the church, but that 4 years set the scene for everything. And as you look through those, all the people who followed him here, and there's one guy in here who is of particular interest, R.A. Beeston, for 1970. Now you've heard that name, Beestons, haven't you? You know the Beasties?
Absolutely.
The
Yeah.
Beasties? Well, that's Robert Beeston, who is Greg's dad and Andy's granddad. And so that's why the Beestons have got such a history and such a heart for this church, because these people are the heroes of the faith. The heroes of the faith. And God says, don't get bogged down in the past. Don't be limited by the past, but remember the heroes of the past, because they can be the ones who can really inspire you. Let me read some of the things to you about this Henry Reed, of the things that happened in his early life. Some of the things. He was saved from drowning a couple of times, and he believed that God had saved him. In a storm off Cape Horn, right down the bottom of South America, he encountered God and God showed how he had rescued him again and again. His mother had prayed for him in the middle of the night most of the time. So how dedicated was she? And he was trying to save his soul by works in the early ways, early relationship with God. He was working, trying to earn his place in heaven. But then one night while praying at 2 a.m, he realised that we're saved by grace. And the dedication of the man, he used to meet at 5 a.m. with a group to pray. The Lord saved him again, this time from being murdered. Somebody plotted to murder him, and the Lord saved his life. He helped Batman and Faulkner. Now, they were the ones who went and got the land where Melbourne is set up today. And he was a key figure for them. He went and he preached the gospel to the natives, to the Aboriginals who were there at Port Phillip. And he lived with the natives in the bush for a time. And another thing that he used to do, he preached to convicts sentenced to death and would spend the night with them. If they knew they were going to be put to death the next day, he would spend the night with them. Now, how dedication is that? He was a true hero of the faith. And the Bible says, remember these heroes of the faith. In Hebrews 11, it says, now faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. This is what the ancients were commended for. See, Henry Reed, 143 years ago, when this was set up, he didn't know what the ministry of this church was going to be. And so he had faith, just like these ancients. And it says, by faith, we understand that the universe was formed at God's command, so that what is seen was not made out of what was visible. And then it tells you, by faith, Abel offered to God a better sacrifice than Cain did. By faith, Enoch was taken from this life so that he did not experience death. By faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place where he would later receive as his inheritance, he obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. See, when Henry Reed came to this, which was the worst part of Launceston, this was called Alsatia. It was the slum, it was the ghetto. This was the place where all the hotels and the drunks were. This was the place where all the brothels were. And he said, hey, this is a good place to build a church. But he didn't really know at that stage what God had in mind. He just knew that God wanted to reach people. And so he was acting in lots of ways like Abraham did. And then it goes on. By faith, Abraham, even though he was past age and Sarah herself was barren, was enabled to become a father. And then it says all these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance. It goes on, by faith, Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau in regard to their future. By faith, Jacob, when he was dying, blessed each of Joseph's sons and worshipped as he leaned on the top of his staff. By faith again, Moses' parents hid him for 3 months after he was born because they saw he was no ordinary child and they were not afraid of the king's edict. And that was when the Pharaoh had said, kill all the babies. By faith, the people passed through the Red Sea as on dry land. But when the Egyptians tried to do so, they were drowned. By faith, the walls of Jericho fell after the people had marched around them for 7 days. And on it goes, right through to when you get to Hebrews chapter 12. And it says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, that's what they referred to when the writer to the Hebrews said, we've got a great cloud of witnesses, those people of faith who has gone before us. And in this congregation, we've got Henry Reed and Robert Beeston and all the other people who have served here, and not just the pastors, but they've been heads of the Sunday school, they've been people who have gone into open air ministry, there have been lots of ministries, lots of missionaries who have gone overseas. And you see, they're that great crowd of witnesses, and even today, the analogy that's drawn here is that they're there in heaven saying, psst, go on, you can do it, go on, see more people, plunder the kingdom of darkness and bring more people into the kingdom of light. Yes, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. So that's really what this museum is all about. Yeah, there are cool things that we can come and see how they did things in the old days, but for me the coolest thing is coming in here and being surrounded, seeing their pictures on the wall of the great leaders in the past, and they just inspire us to say, you know, I wonder if we can have as great an impact upon the people of Launceston and beyond as they had. Let them be your inspiration today. When you think about Henry Reed and the things that he did when they set the church up 143 years ago, let's be spurred on by that great cloud of witnesses.